Greetings! Thank you for tuning in today. This video is going to be a little bit of a repeat from last week's video because I got some feedback that it was difficult to hear, and I have these handy dandy wireless headphones with microphones, so hopefully this allows for better ease of hearing. But this is perfect because today is a wonderful day to create an altar. It is the full moon lunar eclipse. Sometimes this is known as the rose moon or the strawberry moon because 'tis the season for both strawberries and roses. So it's also, as I mentioned, the lunar eclipse, although I don't think we can see it from here. Blessings to the countries who can. So I want to say just a few things about altar making. So some of this will be a repeat from last week, but that's okay. I started making altars probably about in 2006, 2007 when I went through my first yoga teacher training at Dhyana Yoga in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I remember my teachers talking about altars. And at first I was like, my recognition of that word altar took me back to my childhood religion, the religion that I was born into. And I had to take a step back and redefine that word. So if a similar thing happens for you, I encourage you to do that as well. Call it whatever you want: sacred space, meditation, place, prayer, space, whatever it is that you want to call it is perfect. The point is that we're creating this sacred space where we can be, where we can meditate, where we can read, where we can chant, we can pray, whatever it is that we're called to do. I find that the very act of creating altars can be very transformative in terms of emotions, for me in particular. If I'm feeling sadness, I'm feeling heavy, if I take the time to clean and clear a space and create something beautiful, suddenly some of that heaviness has moved through. It has been transmuted through the act of creating this altar or this sacred space. So I encourage you to give it a try and see what happens for yourself. So I just want to share a little story that I did share last week, but I think it's nice to share this story again so that you can hear me. I remember we were given an assignment in my yoga teacher training that we were to build an altar at home and meditate. And I really went for it. I spent so much time creating this beautiful space, cleaning not even just the table that I built it on. I think it was a coffee table. It's the same coffee table that I've been building altars on for over a decade now. And I spent all this time, I gathered items, and then I spent very little time meditating. And this was the process for me, and it was a pattern for me. I would create a beautiful space, and then I would not meditate for very long. And then I started to beat myself up about this because I was like, the point is to meditate. But looking back, now I really see how the act of creating the altar was my meditation. This was my practice. And it continues to be a very, very important part of my practice. I come to my altar most days, if not every day. Today I changed out my flowers because they were dying, so I put fresh flowers on my altar, which is currently an altar to Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and learning, wisdom and language. And when we make our altar today, I'm going to have a nod to her. But I also come to my altar when I'm chanting, meditating, or if I'm just at a loss and I am feeling the weight of the world as it is right now. And it's just a refuge. It's a place of safety. It's a place of prayer. It's a place to be. So I am really excited to share this with you. There is no wrong way to make an altar. There are lots of different traditions and cultures that have specific ways to make an altar, but I'm not going to guide you through that. I'm just going to guide you through some ways that I have been practicing myself, ways that I've learned from different teachers like Carrie Martinez, Pixie Lighthorse, her teacher. So I have some items over here that we're going to use, and let's get started, shall we? We are going to build this altar honoring the directions, honoring the elements, and because it's the full moon, this is also going to be an altar of releasing and letting go. So the full moon is a great time to create an altar and consider what it is that you are ready to let go of. So you can take a few minutes before you create the altar, maybe grab a journal, and just ask yourself that question: what is it that I'm ready to let go of? And you might choose specific items to go in line with that. So that's totally up to you. I have here a compass because, as I said, we're going to work with the sacred directions. And we're going to begin with the east because this is where the sun rises. And for me, the east is right here on my table, so I'm going to start there. We want to work with a clean space, so take just a moment to clear your space here using natural cleaner if you can. I have a homemade cleaner here. It smells like vinegar. So just clean that space off. You might also wish to clear yourself and the space, the room, using some sage. And you can also use a rattle, which we're going to use both. So I'm going to pour some sage into here, which will also go on to our altar. And this is just dried white sage in a dish. Some matches, oops, falling all over the place. Beautiful. And this is a turkey feather. I've been seeing a lot of turkeys in my neighborhood, and one of them left me a gift in my yard. So I'm going to use that to clear myself, to clear the space. And if you don't have sage, you can use a rattle. And another thing you might do is call in some help. So if you have ancestors that you'd like to call in, we're going to call in the energy of the moon, Saraswati, the medicine Buddha. Please come be with us as we create this altar of prayer, of honoring. So you can do that in your own words, whoever it is that you feel called to call in. And they'll come and help you. So now that the space is clear and we're ready to build, I'm going to begin with some pretty cloth that I have here, sort of spring colors. I'll just put that there. And there's something about the moon that makes me think white, the color white, this pure white light of the moon. So I'm also going to have this beautiful silk scarf here, right in the center of the altar. And as I said, no wrong way, so you can choose whatever items feel best for you. We're going to begin in the east. The color of the east is yellow. So I have a little yellow stone that we're going to use to represent the east. This is also where wind resides, the element of wind or air. So to represent that, I'll put our sage there. I'll put our turkey feather, and they do fly up to 50 feet, so I'm counting it. So we'll put that feather there. And other things that you could put bells. I'm going to also place our rattle there. So anything that makes you think of the element of air. And then from the east, we'll move to the south. And in the south is the color red. So I have a red stone here. We'll put that there. And I'll give you a close-up of the altar. I can tell that the angle is not very good. And then we have a candle for fire, which is the element of the south. Go ahead and light that candle. Also, I chose a white candle, again, for the purity of the moon. A pink one would also be good, considering it's the rose moon or the strawberry moon. Or any candle. You can also use other things in the south, like that represent transformation. This is where growth happens. So, and potential. I have here a shell, and this is also really important because this is a spiral. And it's nice to always have a spiral of some sort on your altar that represents the spiral of life. And because this is a shell, which makes me think of transformation, I am going to put this in the south. And I'm also going to put the seeds of potential in the south. So I'm going to put some sesame seeds that I have here in your container. And you can just organize it any way that is visually appealing to you. So east, south, and then we move to the west. And the color of the west is black, so I have a black stone here. And the element that we honor in the west is water. Just a little cup of water. And this is where we can honor our emotions, feelings. This is a place of cleansing, of offering, prayer. So any other items that you want to offer there, I think I'll put our offerings. So I like to have salt and tobacco. So I have a little bit of tobacco in this container, and this is just some regular salt. As offerings to those helpers that we called in, offerings to the altar itself, to all of the energies that are present there. So I'm going to put this in the west also. They don't have to go in the west. They can go anywhere on your altar that feels good to you. But I'm going to put that there. And then finally, we're going to move on over to the north. And the north is represented by the color white, which if you think about the North Pole and it being cold, that makes sense. So I have a little white stone here. I'll place there. The north is earth. This is where we honor the element of earth. And it's also where our ancestors reside. So I have a few things to put in here. I have some salt from the earth, and it's pink to honor that pink rose moon. And I have some rose quartz, which I include in every one of my altars because to me rose quartz represents love, which is at the center of all things. So I'll put that there in the north as well. And then also another thing that I include in all of my altars is quartz, clear quartz, which is a magnifier and a cleanser. So it magnifies the prayers and intentions that we're putting into this altar. So I'll also place that in the north. And here is my Murti of Saraswati. And she's also going to go in the north because she is a helper spirit, sending prayers to this altar. The center of the altar can be left open to represent ether or space, or you can put something in the center. And today I'm going to put a few items to really honor the moon. So I have a moonstone that I'll put right in the center, and I have some essential rose essential oil that I'm going to add to. And voila, we have an altar. Here, I'll bring the camera up so you can get a closer look. So we have, see, maybe if I do it this way, you can see this whole altar here. Hopefully that makes sense. There you go. You can see all the directions, all the items. And so once you have your altar set, best to come to it often, give it lots of love and energy, and you can make a new one at the new moon if you'd like, and at the new moon that can be a calling in altar. And when it's time to take down the altar, the taking down process is just as important as the building process. So you want to go in the opposite direction. So since we started in the east, we're going to want to end in the east. So when we break it down, we'll go from the north to the east. And I thought I'd sing a little song to honor the directions while we have this altar. Spirit of the east, carry me. Spirit of the east, carry me home. Spirit of the east, carry me to myself. Spirit of the south, carry me. Spirit of the south, carry me home. Spirit of the south, carry me to myself. Spirit of the west, carry me. Spirit of the west, carry me home. Spirit of the west, carry me to myself. Spirit of the north, carry me. Spirit of the north, carry me home. Spirit of the north, carry me to myself. Spirit of the moon, carry me. Spirit of the moon, carry me home. Spirit of the moon, carry me to myself. In deep gratitude to all of my teachers, to this beautiful and ancient tradition of making sacred space. In deep gratitude to Saraswati, to Sister Moon, and in deep gratitude to each of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I wanted to say that if you're interested in learning more about making altars, I am about to start a 6-week altar making series. It's going to be an email course, and it's also going to include 4 live Zoom classes. So if you're interested in that, you can email me. My email address is eringan@gmail.com. That's ERINGAHAN@gmail.com. Many blessings, happy sacred space making. Satnam, Namaste.